Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Wanted to welcome everybody out for this live panel hosted by CSA Research, where we will be talking about language selection as a strategic concern. My name is Arl Lomel. I'm a senior analyst with CSA Research. If you're not familiar with us, we are a market research firm that focuses on the best practices, and information needed for enterprises to go global and on the business processes that language service providers undertake to make this possible. Think of us as being a bit like Forrester or Gartner, but focus specifically on what it takes to go global. With me today, I have a panel of three people who are among my favorite people in the language sector, who represent a variety of companies. And rather than go through a big long introduction of each of them, I've asked each of them to just say their name, who they work for, and one fun fact that you may not know. And I'll start by sharing my fun fact is recently I got into sewing by hand 18th century clothing, and I threatened them earlier that maybe I should show up wearing a tricorn hat, which would definitely take away from the seriousness of this panel. And with that, Priscilla?
Hi, I'm Priscilla. I'm from Adobe, and my fun fact, I kind of like Arl. I am a fiber and fabric enthusiast. Is a way to put it. I used to own alpacas. I spin my own yarn. I quilt, sew, I knit, I weave, I dye. I love all of that stuff outside of work.
Okay. And Patricia?
Hi, I'm Patricia and I work at FM. And fun fact about me is that I am a big Formula One enthusiast. And my husband and I have each of us a fantasy team. So we compete against each other. He's a big Ferrari fan. I'm a big McLaren fan. So it makes it for a fun environment here in my household when it's race weekend.
Okay. And Rafaela?
And I'm Raffaella Buschiazzo. I am Senior Director of Localization at Salesforce. And a fun fact about me is that I got engaged in the middle of the Nevada desert during Burning Man in 1998. And since then, it's been history, and I'm happily married with the same guy. And it was on the roof of an RV, and we had the desert at our feet.
Thank you. By the way, I can see from the comments it's all Team McLaren here, Patricia. So you're clearly in the right here.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So as a bit of introduction, why we brought these three experts together is that often talk about the language selection has tended to just focus on the value of adding languages. It's an ROI concern. And of course, that's important. Nobody wants to make an investment that doesn't deliver a positive ROI. But there are many more factors that go into setting an effective language strategy. And so I wanted to talk to our panelists today about the kinds of factors that do go into making strategies and how they balance competing demands and competing limitations to form an effective language strategy. And hopefully this will provide some guidance for all those in the audience. Now, as we're doing this, please feel free to submit your questions in the comments field. If you're on LinkedIn, you can do it there and it will appear for us. If you're on the StreamYard channel, you can do that as well. We will hold most questions to the end, but I will be monitoring for anything that requires more immediate clarification or that suggests some additional discussion that we can undergo at the moment. So don't hold off, but in most cases, we will answer your questions at the end. So with that, I'm going to turn to the first question I have for the panelists, and we'll let you all take it one at a time. You all represent very different sorts of companies. You have diverse audiences and you have very different sorts of products and services. So in a nutshell or briefly, what are the drivers that your companies have for selecting which languages to translate into? And why don't we start with you, Rafaela?
Yeah, so for us, adding a new language is a major investment. So we have several business criteria that we look at when we need to get there. So we look at the growth potential in the region, that country, that city. We look at the market size, right? How big, how profitable, how we can gain sales contracts there. We look at what kind of capability we have there. So I'm thinking of the Salesforce ecosystem maturity in that region. I'm thinking of if we have we look at if we have in-country partners in that place, and all the capability to support to justify to add a new language. And then sometimes there are reasons that have to do with the competition that is there, right? There is competition, so we need to serve the same or better than our competition in that region. Then also we think of alignment, meaning that existing products offer a specific language coverage. So we don't want to have language gaps. And so, of course, new features for those products will need to be localized in the same language set to avoid breaking the user experience, going from a feature to another within products within a certain cloud. And by cloud, I mean different industry parts of our CRM products. There is marketing, sales, service, etc. And we look at also the English proficiency. Not, every country has a high level of English, but there are countries where there is a very high level of English. Well, so we take that also in consideration. And then a big factor is also legal compliance, right? So sometimes to start selling in a country, you need to provide a certain language. I'm thinking, French in Quebec. I'm thinking if you want to sell to the public sector, you need to have both products and user assistance documentation like help localized for that language. So this is pretty much, in a nutshell, what criteria we look at when we need to add a new language. And again, it's a big, big investment to add a new language at Salesforce. We have a lot of assets that need to be localized.
Okay. Patricia, what are the factors that are at work for FM?
So we have different factors. One of them is obviously because we are an insurance company. We have to comply with regulatory requirements in country. So even if we don't issue the policy in language, we have to have the policy translated into that language for regulatory purposes. So it makes it interesting because, not necessarily translating something equals to somebody having that product in that language. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to ask a question, but go ahead.
No, and the other thing too is we are an engineering driven insurance company, which makes us quite unique. So also the engineering content gets translated into a whole different set of languages than we may translate for our product, which is the policy, and from, for example, the marketing and sales materials. So depending really on the type of content and also on our the products for the different business lines, we may have a different language mix.
Okay, and I was going to ask for these ones where maybe you're not issuing a policy to customers in language, but you have to provide a translation for regulatory things. Does that end up creating any sort of legal obligation or requirements around quality that might be different than, than if you were issuing it to the public at large. Is it different there, or is it going to be very similar?
I think it depends on the country, but in general, the English policy is, the source. So legally, the English policy is what has most of the weight, but obviously different countries have different laws, so it may differ depending on the country.
Okay, all right. And Priscilla?
Yeah, so when you think about Adobe, we probably in software, we probably have one of the broadest portfolios of kinds of products against kinds of industries. And so we have about, somewhere between 80 to 110 products or services at the end of the day. And that can include something like an iOS or Android version being different because we have different engineering. So we split all of our products into categories, basically kind of by an industry area. And then under the category, we have numerous products. So there's kind of two levels at which we do this whole process around localization. The first is that my team at a high level, we come in and look at all of the factors that are out there. So a lot of them have been mentioned, but between the go-to-market team and the marketing and sales team and finance, and we've been fed in, they came up with what we call the GEM model, the global expansion model, which really looks at a number of these factors. So we look at where countries fit, and we change the names every year, but is it a country where we already have a presence and we just need to optimize everything there to continue to gain more revenue or more monthly active use out of that? Or is it a country where we just want to get into what does that look like if we start getting into a new country? So obviously ARR, annual recurring revenue, and MAU, monthly active use on all our subscription products. We look at TPM and TAM, so the total penetrable market and the total addressable market. We're constantly looking at those, and that is different whether it's across creative pros or other areas as well. We kind of do deep dives on that and penetration rates of that in every country. We think about the number of languages spoken in a country. So even if you have, if we're aiming at Switzerland or we're aiming at, as Raphael said, Canada, you have to think Canada, 2 languages, minimum. So we kind of think about that. We look at percentage rates being spoken and used. We look at percent of English comfort in the region. We think about geopolitical constraints and how that affects things going on. And then really, do we even have an office in the country or some way to sell within that country? That changes what we would do. And then finally, really, when we get down to the product level, it's about engineering bandwidth and capabilities at that given time.
Okay. Now, one of the things when people are thinking about language strategies that often comes up is how do they achieve them? And you have various means. You could use machine translation, and we could go into the strengths and limitations of that. But it's often suitable for high volume content, but where there may be some concerns about quality, it might not be as suitable. You have human translation, which has for years been considered the gold standard, of course, but it's time consuming, it's expensive. And then you see things in the middle, augmented translation, post-editing, and so forth. How do these concerns that you have in making your language strategies end up affecting your choice of how you produce translation? And I'll just open it up to any of you who wants to jump in.
So I can jump in here. So all our products are currently human translated, and by products I mean all the UI parts. They are human translated and human tested, while our documentation is machine translated and with some human post editing by a neural machine translation system that was built in-house at Salesforce. So we machine translate our help in 16 languages. Obviously, we monitor users' feedback on the machine translated pages, and on every machine translation page, we have a disclaimer that links to an English source page saying that this text is machine translated. So that's pretty much our strategy. It's also true that I want to mention that we have a 3 levels of language support. So not everything gets translated into every languages, right? So we have our core products support 35 languages, and that includes English. And this pretty much covers all our target markets. But there is a distinction. We have 17 fully supported languages for which we provide, full localization support for all the Salesforce features, help. And the users can change those languages in the setup part of our app, right? They can change time zone, they can change language, switch from among all these 35 languages. And then we have a end user sets of languages where we localize only what's visible, not to the end user, not, for example, all the admin parts where you can change things in the system, right? Those are only parts that are translated into the 17 fully supported standard languages. But then the interesting part is that we have what we call platform-only languages, which is basically roughly 150 languages, where we offer the support of the grammar for 150 languages that our customers can decide to translate through an internal tool called the Translation Workbench, where they can basically translate stuff in languages that are Welsh, Yiddish, Tereo, not the usual suspects. So this is an additional level of offer that we have, where we don't pay, we don't localize ourselves, but we offer a grammar engine that supports all those languages, which is pretty cool. And also they can also rename parts of our products. Think of, I don't know if you know how Salesforce works, but you have different objects like account, leads, etc. So account can be renamed. Let's say that you are a healthcare provider and you want to rename account as patient, for example, you can do that. Now, it's very easy to do that in English, right? You only have singular and plural. It gets more complicated when you have to do that in Finnish. Then, you have a major grammar cases to support. So we do that, and I think that's pretty interesting. That covers a lot of, world languages.
Okay. Patricia or Priscilla, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing, for us is that, typically translation is around the UI of the product, but in the last 5 to 10 years, it's also become content. When you think about our software. So it's not only are we going to localize the menus and things that are there, but does this product require templates? Does it require other things in there? So when we think about that, and what method to use, it can actually change quite a bit. We have a separate globalization and localization team at Adobe that is pretty amazing. They also primarily have built out in-house almost everything they need, because we just have such a huge and differentiated type set of offerings that they need to deal with. And so they're the ones that go in and do all the execution on this. And I know from talking to the leads and my counterparts there, they're always looking at what's happening with AI and, neural translating and everything. And they're bringing that in to try to make the best possible things that they can do. So we still do use vendors for translation, and we do machine translation, and we're starting to do all these other things. And then, they can do that. And then my team kind of helps look at that. We give the recommendations around the languages, but we did work together last year to look at the fact that, nowadays there really are so many levels of localization offering that can be given to a product team. We can say, look, we're going into this country for the first time. We know that we want localization, but maybe we don't have to pay for, total human touch on this one. Let's see how it goes. Or, there's a lot of countries in this language. Let's give them a lot of things. When it comes to content, we're much more concerned around culturalization, or making sure those things are, more hyper local, as some people are calling them, and appropriate for that place. So it does make it a little bit more complicated. It's not like a one-stop shop in doing this, but our team does as I said, the overall analysis. We come back with recommendations. The product teams at the end of the day are the ones that make the decisions at Adobe. We do not make them. Executives do not make them typically. Executives would love to have as many as possible. Product teams are constrained by usually engineering and what they can get done in a given amount of time, and or how many things need to be localized at the end of the day. Is it just menus? If it is, that's pretty easy for us. Honestly, our localization team, they can just whip stuff through, whether it's mobile, desktop, web, fairly quickly. And we have the benefit that we have COGS, or cost of goods sold. So in many cases, we can, upfront have the money for the localization, but then that comes back in. So even though it is a cost factor, pure localization is not, I want to say, a huge problem for most products if we're talking about typical UI localization. Where it does come into play then is, what about the content? What do we do with that? My dream, being in a creative company, is that we would have all localization the same on all surfaces across all of our products, which, we've started to make headway, and everybody loves the dream. But when you get down to the nuts and bolts of execution, it is very hard to get that passed through. So we have constant ways that we're trying to influence the various product teams to do this. But when it comes to culturalization, which really is where my heartbeat lies, how do we make the stuff that we have for customers appear to them to be made for them and for their country, so that they want to use our stuff most? That is where, you think about French, and I think now it's like 29 countries have it as their official language, but over 60 countries use it. And then you think French Canada, French Caribbean, French Africa. You have, for culturalization, a completely different set of things you need to think about when you think about colors and flora and fauna. So, we're not there yet, but that's really where I would like to get. But we do have, I'd like to say that even all of our normal products, that we have a certain set of languages, like Raphael's like, we've got 17. I'm like, I'd love to say that's true across board. We do work with CSA a lot. We've, looked at a lot of their research over the years. For a while, I had the G34, or the Global 34 initiative, where I was trying to get us to get across all surfaces and products 34 languages that were the highest GDP in the world, or eGDP usage in the world. We've had to pivot off of that, but I would say that most products, we are, somewhere in the range, typically, depending on acquisitions and things, of, somewhere from 4 to 30 languages. And then of course, Acrobat.com has more. But in recent years, we've done some more amazing things as well. Like when Firefly, our Gen AI product, came out last year. At first, they were like, we're just focused on English. You all know how fast things move. And they didn't have time to think about language, which of course alarmed our team. And there was a number of people across various teams, including globalization, et cetera, that banded together. And within 6 months, were able to put out, localized for a nice section of countries, but supporting 100 languages through prompts and things, which, we really see how far we've come in this day and age. And I'm really hopeful that AI continues to help us be able to do more of that.
Okay. Patricia, any thoughts?
For us, because we have a very defined scope of work, most of the stuff that we translate is geared towards our clients and prospects and brokers. So we use mostly human translation. We now have, obviously, as we all have started feeling like the pressures of, oh, there's AI now. So can we look into this and see if we can apply AI anywhere to help us, save money? So we're looking at some types of content where I could see that, automation, be it AI or even neuro machine translation, would, be useful, and with post editing. So we're looking into that. I use machine translation regularly for the types of requests where, oh, I just got this in Italian and I need to understand it in English. Can you translate this for me? Sure, I can. I'm going to give it to you, machine translation version of it. Are you okay with that? If it's just for your understanding. And 99.9% of the time, people are more than happy with the machine translation translated version, even if it's just, raw machine translation. It does the job, and it does the job well. And I get it to them in like 5 minutes. It costs us nothing because it's already embedded in our Office product. So it works really well for that type of use case.
Okay.
And then we have the case of Quebec, right? We have we operate in Canada. We have an office and clients and prospects in Quebec. So since they passed this recent law in which they're getting a lot stricter with the usage of French there, we started to have to translate a lot more into Canadian French, including employee communications. So it's another thing that, it became a requirement for us.
Okay.
So, Patricia, question: Do you support both French and Canadian French, or just French?
Yes. European French and Canadian French. For
And Canadian
employee
French.
communications, just Canadian French, because as a company, we all know we're a US based company, so we assume that all of our employees are English speaking. So we don't translate normally employee communication, but for Quebec we have the law, so we need to be compliant.
Okay. So what I find really interesting listening to all of you is really you have very, very different concerns. You have very, very different approaches, and it drives different selections for translation methods. And it really shows there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer to this question of how to build a language strategy. It really requires deep knowledge of not just your markets, but what your organization's goals are, what its principles are. And it has to respond to, yes, broad market, but also internal needs. And now I have a set of questions for the three of you individually. And I'll go ahead and maybe start with you, Patricia. So, you're a business insurance provider, and these regulatory and legal requirements matter a great deal, as you've told us. But these can come from any direction. So how do you manage the information just to know what's needed and where you should invest when you're dealing with these, governmental entities? It could be at national or subnational or even potentially local levels with their own requirements. How do you manage that information?
So we have a process for approving when business cases for translating policies, for example. We just don't go and translate our policy into any language. There's got to be a business case for it. It has to go through an executive chain of approval. And when I get the approval, then yes, I'll go ahead and I'll translate into that language. But it's not anybody that comes to me, hey, I need this policy translated into Italian. Can you do this? No. So we have to, when that happens, we have to direct that person to, this is the document outlining the process. This is the tool you have to fill out so you can put your business case, and this is subject to approval. If it gets approved, then yes, I'll go ahead and translate it into Italian. If it doesn't get approved, then it doesn't get approved. So those types of scenarios, we work very closely with, our executive sponsors and our underwriting department. We have certain groups within underwriting that work very, very closely with us. We partner with them really well, and they're the ones that we're in constant communication saying, okay, do we need to translate this into this language? Should we do this? Should we not do this? So that we're making sure that from a business perspective, it makes sense. And also from a legal and regulatory perspective, that it makes sense and we're in compliance.
Okay, so you have a really pretty strong governance policy in place to make sure you're doing what's needed and control this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Maybe Priscilla. So you and I in the past have talked a lot about this, that you have very specific demographic profiles for your customers, and this makes it somewhat challenging to gather information on what do creative professionals in Thailand do or whatever. Many of them do know English quite well, and so they may feel comfortable using it, but they may prefer other languages. So how do you go about determining the market opportunity for these languages and where to invest, given all the complexity you face with your audiences?
Yeah, it is, if we look at all the things I've already mentioned, so that we kind of go through all of this stuff, we already kind of have a basis for it. The other thing is that, we do have a very good relationship with the regional marketing folks and sales folks. So we're usually in touch with them. We also travel, obviously not to all the countries in the world, but we travel, we take advantage of our research teams, et cetera, to figure things out. But it is true that when you look, and I should say we are creative professional, but my sort of umbrella is both the creatives on the Creative Cloud side of things, as well as the Document and Business Cloud, like the Acrobat side of things. So we kind of have both of those things going on. And then within those, we have people that aren't necessarily 100% doing a high-end photographer's job, but you have the people that are just coming in and using like our current product, Adobe Express, that's really for somebody that just wants to get their creative ideas out there and have possibly a different proficiency when it comes to English. So I think the complication is, again, like I said, my dream is really to have these languages for everybody. And when we travel around the world and I speak to people from enterprises, in Europe and Asia, et cetera, a lot of them are capable in English, but most of them also say, if your product had high quality from, whatever their perspective is of high quality localization, they would love to use our products in their language. Even the Dutch, who I always say this, I don't know any person from the Netherlands that can't speak 6 languages fluently, right? It's like, oh my goodness. And, but they love to use Dutch. And so we do have to look at all of the business factors and look at them. I think one of the things that we have the biggest problem with is Adobe sells no matter where we are. And I think people will use it in English. And with Google out there and Google Translate and all these other things now as well, people have told us often that there is more information available to them on how to use our products, which is always, we have complicated products. So how to use our products, more information in English. And if they use their local words or terminology that have been done in the localized translation, sometimes they don't get back as many hits on how to do things in their local language. So, but they would still prefer to have better local language and more information in local language. So that again is, I'm hoping, like, how can we, harness AI to maybe do more there. But we do take into account, what is the exact industry, what is going on in that industry, are there competitors in that industry, what have the competitors done, are they giving local language or not, or is there a competitive company that is from that country homegrown? How does that look? What do we need to do? So we're always trying to judge that. I think I do try to encourage our product teams that even if, for example, we have, China, the PRC, as has a lot of cloud restrictions, many governmental restrictions. And if you're an MNC from outside of China, it is very difficult to do business in China under the constraints that they want to have, which Adobe finds as well. But, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be localizing in simplified Chinese, because there are many people around the world that use that language. So how do we bring all these factors in to try to decide, which demographics of people are using our products? We also are, like many of you, using data, constantly looking at where people are using on this like monthly active use or even daily active use. Where is that coming from? And depending on what the product is, we might see users spring up from countries that for our creative high-end professionals has not been something where we've seen that on those products, but on these other products we do. And then we need to sit down and really dig into why is that the case? And, do we need to then go localize for these people? So I think really we kind of do it with a holistic view, a holistic understanding of where is the company willing to invest based on all the large factor, economic and opportunity type things. Then we go down into the country level and we talk to the product teams and we work with them specifically. Last year, I started 2 years ago, started a new team called Global Insights and Growth Strategies. We were able to add a business team to our team where they literally go much deeper than the product teams, very specifically on country and returns. And so they go together to the product teams and talk to them about what are the things that you're seeing in your industry that you're concerned about. And then we try to come to an agreement on what we would localize.
And that sounds like a fantastic approach to address this. If you have the resources to do it, which you do. So
we need more. But amazingly, I have a tiny team, relatively, of 24 people right now against a 30,000, person company, and billions that we're selling around the world. And we have a great team, and they're just really doing a great job on this.
Okay. And Rafaela, so turning last to you in this little section, you're B2B, so you're different, very different from Adobe. But when I look at your customer base, you run a gamut of verticals and business types, everything from, very small businesses to huge multinationals. They have to support their customers and their internal users around the world. So how does this diversity of needs complicate your decisions, and what measures are you using to determine success against this big variety of use cases?
Well, as I mentioned, I think that the three-tier language approach allows us to cover, all our users worldwide pretty thoroughly. Basically, we as I said, we essentially provide 35 languages, and these 35 languages, they need to be supported regularly, right? We cannot skip releases. We need to keep up with the 3 big major releases per year, where we localize all new features across clouds within Salesforce in 35 languages. So this is can be challenging, right? Because also Salesforce acquires many companies regularly. So every time there is an acquisition, you need to look at what comes with the acquisition. Is the product already localized? In how many languages? Is it even internationalized? Is it even ready, right, to support? Does it even support Unicode, right? When you buy startups, you never know. And so these are all challenges that we face in our regular daily professional life, and so these are often these products that need to be migrated, right, to our core code base, and when it's possible, we align them, right, with our language set, languages that we offer. It's not always possible, as you know. I mean, it's for many different reasons. As I said, some of the products that are not even internationalized yet. So again, it boils down to engineering resources, right? As Priscilla mentioned earlier, there are a lot of pieces that go with, right? And it's a big company. It has 70,000 people. So it's in growing mode. It has been in growing mode for the last 13 years since I've been there. Every release is different than the previous one, with AI and everything. Every time there is something different, which is fun, but it's also challenging and requires resources and people and money. And then it takes also engineering work to maintain those platform languages that I mentioned, right? It's great. We can offer our Canadian French users in Quebec French Canadian through the platform only language, right? They can, if they don't like French, which is among our 35 languages that we fully support, they can also add their country flavor of French through our grammar engine. But that takes also efforts, right, to maintain that product and to continue maintaining different grammars, different languages, because we're adding languages there. And so we have different ways to measure success in this. It's users adoption data. We have that. We look at that. We monitor that. We see spikes. When we see spikes, we try to understand what's going on, and we have ways for customers to open investigations, cases, and we get those, right? We need to resolve those, so we understand if we are doing things well or not. And then we also look at how our documentation helps deflect these cases where people need to support. So if we have good documentation, that reduces, there is a case deflection, right, for people to contact a human being that is at the support. So we look at all this, and then of course there are sales. We are CRM sales company, and that's what is important, right? What we have in terms of sales in those countries in the pipeline, and essentially we need to satisfy, at those criteria to get sales in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we've only got a few more minutes here, but just for those of you who are attending, please do submit your questions. I've got a few more for the panel, but then we want to respond to your questions. Just briefly for the three of you, what information do you wish you had access to in an ideal world that you can't get for whatever reason? Here I'm thinking of data that would help inform your strategic decisions. So any of you, is there just data you wish you could get?
I think for us, the biggest thing is that a lot of our products, we have newer products, but a lot were, fairly old and before we had data instrumentation out there. And so, for us, it's very easy to get download information. I downloaded in this language, but that isn't very useful for me to make a case for usage and was it good or how do we want to do it? And so in that new sort of business and growth team that we have started to add analysts and data people who are fantastic. And they've gone in and started to write up PRDs on how to instrument for the things that we need. And then they have to go in and talk with every single team to say, for your product, what are the key actions that a customer would take? And if we're putting in features that are culturalized, what does that look like, so that we can understand that if we put in something new, that, you know, and I'll totally make this up because, you know, like vertical text for Japanese, of course, that is used almost everywhere. But if we have a new product or an acquisition, like Rafaela said, it might not be there. If we added it in and we had it in Japan, if nobody used it, I mean, that would tell us a lot, right? Of course, that probably is not the case. Then it tells us a lot. And then we can use that to try to talk to the product teams or other product teams about the success in one thing and we need to do another. So I think that's really it for us right now. One of the big things is instrumenting to get the correct information on culturalized features so that we can use it as a defense to go back and try to do more.
Okay. Rafaela or Patricia, any information you wish you had?
I think in my case, I wish I had more like information about markets where we're trying to develop like sooner. So it's not that I don't get the information, but I wish I could get that data sooner so we can influence those conversations about, you know, what needs to be translated and localized, what doesn't, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of times people come to me when, you know, it's already too late. So decisions have been made. And when I tell people, well, that doesn't work for this country or for this language, now what? It's already done. What do we have to do? And then we have to go into, you know, crisis management mode or trying to put band-aids on things. So I wish that people came to me with data earlier in the process before those decisions are made, so I can help them make better informed decisions.
Okay. Rafaela?
I like to see, maybe it exists, but usually it's payment services, right? But I like to see some granular information about countries all over the world. I know always the usual suspects, where and understand what are the language requirements in every country, yeah, in granular details, what is needed, and what is needed as a legal requirement, right?
Okay. Yeah. We've started to gather some of that at CSA Research, but in some cases, it's actually quite difficult to find this information and
Yeah.
determine it. Harder than you would think.
No, I know that is hard. So that's why I think it would be nice. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just looking at the questions. We do have one from Alexandra, and I think this was aimed at you, Priscilla, but any of you can chime in. Is there a particular software that you use to measure daily active use?
Sadly, I'm not the right person to answer that. I am not the person that goes in and looks at the data every day. So I'm sorry, Alexandra, I don't have an answer for you. We have multiple teams at Adobe that do that kind of thing.
Okay. I suspect in most cases, just looking across organizations, that's probably something that has to be built on a case-by-case basis as part of the instrumentation.
Yeah. Although I will say we do have an internally homemade built thing that is pretty amazing. But I don't know what feeds into that if we use any, you know, outside software that feeds into that for any other thing. But we do have a homegrown version of that our team does access, but there are so many different data things that have to come together for that, that's out there.
Okay. And again, please submit your questions. I do have one more for you. And this is, I think, comes back to a key point for making strategies is, you know, you all are leading high level within your scope of attention, but the C-suite often doesn't pay a lot of attention to language. They either think it's magic or they think it's just a cost to be reduced. Or now they think LLMs are going to solve everything.
Yep.
Even if they won't. But what strategies have you found to be effective in getting buy-in for the strategic decisions you're making? Any good hints for people out there?
We did start several years ago creating a lot of foundational things that we felt like internal training programs and everything around the basis of internationalization and localization and what you need to do. And so we've really tried to do some foundational things. Last week I was building a little deck and realized that from 2017, so not that long ago till today, whether it's the C-suite or basically senior executives have invested in our team, and we've grown 2,700% in terms of number of people. So, yep, we don't have a huge team, but in terms of believing that the things that we are doing is moving us in the right direction has been supported. And then, as I said, that business team that we started, they've really been able to dig into data that I didn't have the opportunity to do prior to that. And they've been able to go to teams, even like Photoshop, who's been around for, 40 years, and start showing them deep dive information about countries that they didn't necessarily have the knowledge of. And so, we've found that all of these layers of things that we're doing has continued to be the case, that we get overall support. I would like them to mandate that everything Adobe does is in every language for everybody, but I think all of you would like that, right? I mean, when I talk to all of my peers like you out in the world, everybody is facing the same challenges in their country, in their companies, and so I'm thankful for what we've been able to do and how we're continuing to grow.
Okay, Patricia, any words of wisdom?
I think one thing that like my manager now does like really well, she helps me going upward and kind of selling why we have a translation and localization team at FM Global. And she's really starting to understand that we touch pretty much every department and division at FM Global. We saw that very clearly with the rebranding efforts that we just went through. So, she's a great asset and ally to me. Now, also, we're fortunate enough that one of my former bosses is one of our executive vice presidents. So he's another great friend and ally of our team. And he really, and he understands why we exist, why we do certain things, why we have the budget that we have, so on and so forth. So it's really helpful, but we still find challenges in terms of some groups not understanding, why they have to engage with us much earlier in the process of, localization, so on and so forth. So this is something that I still have to work with, which is, educating people and, making them understand that, hey, we're not just here to translate from A to B. We have other things that we can help out. As Priscilla was saying, the culturalization aspect of things, and make people understand of those nuances that come with globalization.
Okay, and Rafaela?
So a little bit like Priscilla, Patricia. It's I think that we don't have endless budget, right? At Salesforce, we are a pretty strong organization, globalization organization. I've been there 13 years. Team expanded. We had many acquisitions. So products expand, and we lead product localization. So I'm talking from product localization perspective here, right? And we are under engineering, so it's a very strong organization to be in. In my experience, in Silicon Valley in the last 20 years. So you don't have to explain the the fact that we need localization for those languages, right? We have, as I said, 150,000 customers worldwide. We have, billions of dollars from international sales. So, we have the numbers. What I think is challenging is that nobody has endless budget, right? And products grow, content grows, needs grow. And so you need always to continue adjusting, right? And to put resources where you need the most, where it's most visible. That's why, data comes, in handy, right? When you need to make this kind of decision. I see there is a question here about descoping languages. In my 13 years, we never had really to descope a language. It would be hard to descope a language. That's why it's a very, very you need to put a lot of thought when you add a new language, because it's a major investment, and you have legal ties, you have contracts, right? You cannot just say, oh, sorry, we pull out Finnish today, just because Finnish people understand English well, right? So there is no need to serve help in Finnish. We do machine translation, right? And then we see how it goes, raw machine translation. So you see what I'm saying? Balancing, a constant balance of putting your resources where it's mostly needed. This is our daily dance.
I think back over my career working with this sector, and every time I've met somebody who says, we've got it all figured out, I know within 6 months it's going to completely fall apart for them. You can count on change, and it seems like it's only accelerating.
Yeah.
6 months is a long time, actually.
Yeah, it is.
It's less. It can be less.
We've even seen that at CSA Research, where we used to do forecasts for a year ahead for industry size. And now we've had to give that up, and we're doing it quarter by quarter because technology is changing, economic conditions are changing, political conditions are changing, and we just have no idea what's coming. And so, we're like you, we're all having to deal with, at CSA Research, we're having to deal with these compressed timeframes to figure things out. And it makes getting data more and more essential, because without it, you're blind. So, all right. And you addressed Soren's question. Did anybody else want to touch on anything with descoping languages? That's a big topic we could spend a lot of time on, but
it's huge. I won't go into a lot, but it is rare, but at Adobe, but we have sometimes descoped languages in the past, in particular in the last, I think after the emerging markets, that was a big time where we had to review, because we did do a lot of localization for small individual products in some of the smaller CIS regions, or Eastern European regions. And when we had to look at the numbers later for a given product, again, we never do it blanket, but we looked for a given product. In some cases, it was so low and that we descoped, but it is rare for us to do that.
Okay. All right. Well, we're right about time here. I did want to thank all of the panelists for their insights. I'm sure that, if any of you have additional questions you couldn't bring up here, I think all of you are available on LinkedIn or can be found in some fashion to address additional questions. If any of you, have questions that this has raised and you'd like to engage more, feel free to contact us at CSA Research, to see what we have available, and hopefully we'll see all of you again soon at another webinar. So thank you to the panelists, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.